So for the video this week, we're going to be using a very unusual camera angle to film from so that you can see how the front side of this swing works, which really, when it comes to the release, is what I think most people would be expecting. You can define the release as the club moving past, the club head moving past the lead arm into the follow through. And how we do this part of the swing matters tremendously in terms of controlling the distance and the direction of our shots. So let's spend a little bit of time talking about where I think people get this wrong, and then I'll get into some drills and exercises and some full explanation of really how the follow through should work. And the stack and tilt grid that we have built on the ground, I'll get into a little bit more detail of how this can help you with your release. If you've seen enough of my videos, you'll be familiar with the diagram that's on the ground. This is the grid from Stack and Tilt, and it's built on this mat using the T-claw. And what I use it for in my lessons is to build a visual guidance for golfers as to how the club and the hand should move. So the outside lines that we have here are guidance for the club head path on the backswing, the downswing, and importantly today into the follow through. We're going to talk about how this club has to exit and move around the grid in the follow through. Similarly, the line that's closer to my feet represents how the hand path also has this arc to it. That's because we stand to the side of the ball and we play with these clubs that are on an angle. So we're swinging around us by standing to the side of the ball. There's a built-in arc to this swing. Understanding that is really the first piece of understanding how the follow through works. If you get the concept of the hands and the club tracing the grid in the follow through, continuing up and into the finish, you'll begin to start to really understand how a good release would work. However, I see a lot of follow through release patterns that do not conform to the grid at all and begin to build in a significant amount of chaos when it comes to controlling contact and the predictability of the outcome from a directional point of view. Something that would look like that would be the golfer who swings down to the ball and for whatever reason may think that the club's supposed to go down the target line for longer. There's a belief out there that a lot of you have where the longer you swing the club head down the target line, the straighter the ball will go. And I certainly sympathize with the logic of that, but unfortunately it's just not true. And when the club head goes down the line for too long, that tends to throw the hands off the grid, and you end up with an exit or a follow through that starts to look more like this one. If I used the grid to draw that, that actually would end up with a club path going too much around the golfer and a hand path going too much out. So we're crossing the grid here in the front side. So that comes from someone maybe trying to swing down the target line for too long. It's often associated with the big mistake of golfers trying to twist the club face closed in the follow through because they think, or you've been told, that that's what you need to do to draw the ball or to fix your slice. This could not be more incorrect. The club head swinging in, the hand swinging out, that, as I would describe it, is the screwdriver, the twisting of the face, the twisting of the shaft to give a club face that's pretty much non-controllable. You have no idea what this thing's doing at any point in time. So that's a huge error I see in golfers where the club goes around, the hand path goes out, and the face gets twisted down towards the ground. If that's something that you see in your swing, you'll know how difficult it is to control where your golf ball goes. Pushes, hooks, terrible shots that finish all over the golf course. Understanding how the hands and club move in the follow through, using the grid correctly, can really help you to get that fixed. I think one of the more challenging things for people to understand when they recognize that the hands and the club have to move around them on the follow through, conform to the grid if you will, is that the club face can move independently of that. So what I mean by that is very often when you tell a golfer that the hands and the club have to come around on the front side here, they'll also keep twisting the club face, keep turning the face, twisting the face left to go around rather than keeping the face square to the arc. See how this arc of the swing would continue left after the golf ball and the club face would conform to that. As we keep going up to start to slow the club down, I would begin to hinge my wrists upwards this is a radial deviation of the wrists, moving them up towards me. That would start to help to slow the club down. If I kept my arm straight forever, the club would pull me off the mat. I certainly don't want that to happen. Most of you are slowing the club down with your arms flexing. You've seen this picture far too many times. But if you're someone who's working on keeping your arms straight, maybe you're doing some of the hit hard, stop quick exercise that I would prescribe, or you're using the ball between your arms and you're squeezing your elbows, you'll get to a point in your release where this full extension of the arms and the club needs something to slow it down. That something is the wrists working up into a radial deviation condition, an upward cocking or hinging of the wrists. And without doubt, the best training aid to help you feel this upward hinge without losing the wrist angles and getting too much flipping or rolling of the club is the Precision Impact Golf Training Aid from Pure Swing Sports. This has featured on the channel before, and its primary benefit, without doubt, is the way that it trains the trail wrist bend in the backswing and helps you to retain it into impact to deliver this desirable shaft lean that we've talked about so often. Getting the hands ahead of the ball can be very difficult for a lot of you to do. So this training aid helps you to understand the sensation of keeping the bend in the trail wrist and then learning to move in the appropriate way to get the correct amount of rotation and side bend to get down to the ground. The other benefit that this has, without doubt, in the follow through, and I've mentioned this in previous videos, where as you follow through, because the trail wrist is restricted in terms of its release, I think a lot of people would think the release is just a flipping of the wrists. Because the trail wrist's motion is somewhat fixed and restricted, the golfer keeps using the body to turn and exit, keeps the arms straighter for longer, which is beneficial to the radius management, helps you to make better contact. And then because this device, you have the ability for it to hinge upwards and downwards, radial and ulnar deviation, radial and ulnar deviation, up and down hinging of the wrists, without compromising the flexion extension, the flipping part. Because this device has the motion of the up and down piece, as you hit the balls with this trail wrist locked in place, the wrists are encouraged to start working up like this. This club's now continuing to trace the grid. The club face is still square to the arc. I'm not getting any excessive rolling or twisting, which is going to make controlling direction very chaotic. Instead, I'm going to start to build a follow through, even at speed, where I have some control of this club face. Club face is under control, wrists are slowing the swing down, and the structure of the swing, the arm straight element, is still intact. That's going to teach you the right way to release the club with the up and down motion of your wrist, not the rolling or the twisting that you might be familiar with. Feels really solid. I didn't hit my camera, which I'm quite pleased about. If you think me not hitting my camera deserves a like, then please make sure you hit the like button for today's video. The sensation that I get whenever I use this training aid is one of stability. The stability of the wrist through the ball, which allows me to keep turning my body and tracing the grid, conforming to this geometry here on the front side of the arc, not concerning myself with the hands and the club flying off the arc and getting the dreaded screwdriver. If you think you suffer with the follow through and you don't understand how to do it, getting yourself one of these could potentially change the way you play the game forever. It's going to improve your contact. I've done videos on this previously and I'll link those later. But this also helps with your follow through. How to release the club correctly can be felt if you know how the wrist stays in bend and then hinges upwards to slow it down. And for the last part of this video, we'll just change back to a more conventional camera angle for a couple of reasons. First of all, to show you how to get the club in place in the downswing to be able to make the correct follow through. Obviously, so many of your release patterns depend on how this club is actually approaching the ball. The release is really an effect of what happens before it. And secondly, I'll finish by showing you some checkpoints you can look for in the follow through when you're filming your swing to make sure that you're doing this correctly. So checkpoint number one that you'd like to look for in the downswing is as the club's getting down to shaft parallel, which we call P6, the precision impact is helping me to retain this trail wrist bend or extension. That has the effect of having this club face in a position where it's turned slightly down to the ground. That is exactly where we want it to be. We can now keep turning through the ball, the club and the hands can conform to the grid. I can deliver something functional in terms of a club face that's relatively square to the target and has the desired shaft lean. And because of that, there's no need to make any last ditch compensation to twist the face closed, start standing up and trying to fix this thing. With the correct alignments in place, I can keep turning into the follow through, and the club and the hands, as you'll see from this down the line camera view, can start to move around the grid and round to the left of me. That would be ideal. So unless you get this club face and club head in position at P6, this final delivery checkpoint, you're not going to find it very easy to do the follow through that you want to. And this is where so many of you get it wrong. The precision impact can help you to retain the feeling of that trail wrist bend. As the device clicks into place, you can then keep the feeling of the trail wrist extension, which is responsible for keeping the face in the right position, coming down towards the ball. As I said, I've done other videos on that using this device, and I'll link those at the end, but that's just a little checkpoint there for you in the downswing to look for. If your club's outside the hands, if the club face is pointing up towards the sky, if you've got any of these issues that you see when you film your swing, the follow through part of your swing is going to look very different indeed. And the final checkpoint you want to look for when you're filming yourself from down the line is the exit point for both the club and the hands. So in a swing where the hands and club conform to the grid correctly, the club head's going to exit the body under the shoulder, more or less through the bicep, and the hands are going to come out in about the same place, ideally the same place. If you notice when you swing through, your club head exits low and your hands exit high, that's the throwing action or the rolling, flipping or screwdriver release that I was referring to earlier. That's not what you want to see. What you really tend to find is a good practice feel, and this is something you can try to do, is as you're coming through the ball, keep the hands tracing the grid, keep the club head tracing the grid with no roll, no flip. And if you do that, and you do that to somewhat of an exaggeration, you'll actually find you're able to bring your hands out lower than the club head. It could very well be a feel that helps you develop and deliver the correct release. So going around your body with the hands and the club and seeing the hands exit below the club is something that I think a lot of you would find very, very useful. Such a nice feel to work the hands and the club around you and yet see the ball take off just to the right of the target. Perfect little push draw back towards the target there. The feeling and the intention I have there is that the hands and the club are going around me on this front side of the swing. They're going to the left. And that can be a slightly tricky thing to get your head around when your intention of the direction your hands and club are going is different to that you want the ball to go. But you need to overcome that, and I think you will once you understand how this geometry works, conforming to the grid, working with the wrist angles that we've described, where the trail wrist stays bent and stays bent for longer into the finish, will really help you to establish a swing which produces something that conforms to the three fundamentals far more consistently. The contact will be more predictable, the quality of your strike will be great, and your distance expectation will also be more predictable. And then the curve of your ball or the directional dispersion of your shots will tighten up. You'll be a more accurate golfer, and that ultimately will lead to lower scores. So some insights and education there into the follow-through release pattern, how the hands and club move, how the body moves with it, and how we use the wrists to stabilize the club face and slow the club down. That release that I described today was very much an inline release or neutral pattern that I would prescribe for most golfers looking to improve. You may not be there right now, and that's okay. It doesn't matter. Everyone does this slightly differently based on the speed of your body and the speed of your arms. Things may look a little bit different. But if you want to fine-tune your release and work towards a more predictable pattern, then the Precision Impact Training Aid can really help you get there much more quickly. If you don't have this device yet and you'd like to learn more about it, I'll leave a link in the description below that take you to the website. There's also a discount code you can use to get you $20 off your purchase. I mentioned earlier that I've featured this Precision Impact Training Aid in other videos on the channel recently, and you can go and check those out now. If you want to look at this one right here, this talks about how you can improve your short game, specifically your chipping around the green using this device. Or you may prefer to watch this one right here, which discusses the subject of shaft leaner impact, how to truly compress the ball like the best players in the world and improve your ball striking like never before.